Welcome to Hackley Public Library in Muskegon, Michigan. My name is Lydia Schmidt and I am a youth services librarian here at the library, and I will be giving you a virtual tour of our building today. So come on and step in a little bit more. So our library opened in October 16th in 1890. We are named after Charles Hackley. Charles Hackley was a famous lumber baron who actually was a huge philanthropist in the city and gave much of his fortune that he made from being a lumber baron to different organizations in the community to help actually build lots of things in Muskegon. A lot of things are named after him here in the town, and we have stuck to Hackley Public Library because we really appreciate the donation he made. He actually went to the city in the 1880s and he said, "You guys, we really need to have a public library here in Muskegon," and they fully agreed with him. And he said, "I will give you $100,000 to build a building and to put books on the shelves." Two very key things for having a library in any city, as you might know. And the city said, "Awesome, we will build a library, put books on the shelves." So they built the building, and then they looked at the final price tag, and they were like, "We kind of spent more money than that." And they went back to Charles Hackley and they said, "Funny thing, instead of that $100,000, we kind of spent $200,000. And he was like, "No biggie, I got you." And he gave him another $100,000. In today's money of 2020, that's about $5.6 million. So anytime someone donates money like that, you're gonna name a building after them. So we are Hackley Public Library, named after Charles Hackley. What is pretty cool about him is that he didn't just give money and then walk away and then get his name on the building. He was very involved in the process of designing the building, as well as donating lumber from his lumber mills to build a lot of the original furniture that we have around the library still, which we'll see farther on in our tour. He also designed our first logo at the library, which you will also get to see on our tour. Now, whenever I start a tour at the library, I like to encourage people to imagine what the building would have looked like in 1890. Obviously, we wouldn't have had as many lights. We would not have had Wi-Fi, which is probably one of the saddest things for me. We wouldn't have as many books on the shelves. We also wouldn't have had a computer lab or computers. What we would have had are spaces to read, spaces to write, to do work, to study. And many of those spaces would have been around one of our 7 fireplaces in the building. From where we're standing right now, you can actually see one of our fireplaces behind our circulation desk. There's another fireplace behind that one, and then we have one in our computer lab, as well as one in our Julia Hackley room, which we'll also see, and then 3 upstairs in youth services. Now, all of these spaces here, there would not have been a circulation desk, there would not have been the computer lab, and this also would not have been open over here. Our reference desk actually would have gone from here to going all the way across the room. You would not have been allowed to go any farther into the building. And on the other side, where we still have them, would have been all of the books. At the time, we had what's called a closed stacks library, which means if you wanted something from the library stacks, you actually had to talk to a library worker who would get the book or item for you, and then you would have come out here to work at one of the tables. And if it was winter, I would have probably been sitting at one of the fireplaces to keep warm. Our computer lab at the library, but it would have been originally a reading room for citizens or patrons to come in to read and do work. You can see we have one of our portraits of Charles Hackley up on the wall. This portrait was done by an artist named Edwin Turner, who's actually from Grand Rapids when he painted that portrait. We will see 2 other paintings by him in our tour today. One a heck of a lot bigger. That is of our opening day. So why don't you come on over this way to see our side room. This is a much smaller reading room, and it actually was originally the ladies' reading room. So they had a private space to come in to do work and to read. Unfortunately, it's a much smaller space. And that, of course, would have been, the women would have been home more often than the men. So unfortunately, we got a much smaller space. This room has also changed much over the years, where it's gone from a ladies' reading room to actually a director's office. Our current director's office is downstairs on our lower levels. And now this is a space that you can come in. You don't have to reserve it. You can come in and hang out. There's outlets to charge your phone or a tablet or a computer, as well as Wi-Fi. And actually, on a cold day, this is a nice warm room to sit in to do work. One of the other things that I really like about this space is the furniture. This is actually original to the building, and if you take a close look, I mentioned that Charles Hackley designed our first logo, and this is our first logo here. Now if you look, you'll see an H, you'll see the L, and you'll see the P for Hackley Public Library. These chairs are very old, and we've done our best to take care of them throughout the years so we can keep using them in the future. Another thing we like to highlight here in the main reading room is our copy of the Book of Kells. Now, the original Book of Kells is actually in Ireland at Trinity College. It is a handwritten, hand-drawn copy of the Gospels of the New Testament. So all of this would have been hand illumination, and it's actually in Latin, and they did it in 800 AD. Ours is not from 800 AD. Ours is actually just a copy of that one, but they don't make many copies, which is why this is pretty special to us. This was given to us in 1990 by the generosity of the Friends, as well as the Muskegon Irish Society. So we built a special display case for our Book of Kells, and what we try to do is we actually try to turn the pages pretty frequently, not only to highlight the really unique aspects of our copy of the Book of Kells, as well as to save on the spine. You want to actually keep moving pages to help keep the book lasting longer. So in our computer lab / old reading room, we saw a painting of Charles Hackley done by a painter named Edwin Turner, and I mentioned that we were going to see more paintings done by him, and this is probably our highlight. This painting depicts the opening day of Hackley Public Library, which at this point in the tour, I usually like to quiz people on asking them when that was, because I usually mention it in my beginning, and I'll just give you the answer here. That was October 16th, 1890, and this painting is supposed to depict all of the people who helped make Hackley Library possible. So you can see on the stage, there's Charles Hackley there giving a speech, and in his hand, he is holding the deed to the library, and he is presenting it to Frederick Nims. You may know that Frederick Nims was the superintendent of the schools in Muskegon, and actually our library used to be a part of the school system. We didn't break away from the school system until the 1990s, which meant if the schools had a snow day, we had a snow day at the library. That is not the case anymore. If the schools have a snow day, we are almost always open, unless there's a polar vortex, which unfortunately has happened in 2019, where we had to close for a few days. There's other notable people in here as well, but the one that I always find the most humorous in this painting actually is in one of the bottom right corners. You'll see a man in a straw hat who is all the way at the bottom there, and that is Edwin Turner himself. He painted himself into the painting, and he, fun fact, was not at the opening of the library. He was a painter, and he was living in Paris at the time. He was sent pictures of everyone who attended the opening or who helped make the library possible, and he decided to have a little bit of creative license with the opening day. So not only does this look like it's an early or late spring day in Michigan, he wanted to make it nice and sunny. We know from record that it actually was kind of a rainy day, a rainy fall day in October. But he also put himself in that painting and his wife. The woman in the black dress there with a flower on her black hat is his wife. We also know that these speeches for the opening of the library took place inside, and that the opening of the library was a little bit more chaotic than this. We actually have pictures next to the painting to show what the opening looked like. Everyone on the stairs of the library, and if you look pretty closely at those windows to the right, you can see our staff members from 1890 peeking out at all of the new patrons that were about to visit their building. And then on the right, we see the founders of the library the day before we opened, I believe, yep. The day before we opened, after the speeches were made, inside down the street, taking a picture. As an older building from 1890, we've obviously updated many different parts of the building, including our electricity. So much of what keeps our space lit has changed when we first opened. So when we opened in 1890, this space would not have had our track lighting here. In fact, if you take a really close look at those squares above you, the squares that are not painted, those would have been skylights. We had many, many skylights in this space. It would have been actually very bright on a sunny day, and that is how we would have been able to see in the library building. We did not have as much electricity at the time. When we first opened, what electricity we had came from the mill, and that was at the mercy of how much electricity the mill was able to send out, or if the mill was even open. So we would have had gas lamps. We still actually have some of the piping for the gas lamps around the library, and we would have had very minimal electricity. But the main thing that we would have relied on would have been our skylights. So we would have had probably only daytime hours, is my imagination. I don't know what our hours were like in the 1890s, but we would have used that skylight to help light up this space, as well as other spaces in the library. So our youth services department actually had many skylights, as well as, where we'll go next in our tour after this, our stacks. That would have kept everything nice and bright. Unfortunately, you'll notice we don't have those skylights anymore, and that is because we had a hailstorm in the 1950s, and it shattered the glass and actually did quite a bit of damage to our collection. And we said, we don't really need the skylights anymore because we had more electricity. So we replaced the roof and the ceiling with basic ceiling panels and also just basic roof, and then updated our electricity, which helps keep it bright today. But one thing that's really special about in the very back of the room there are our stained glass windows, which are original to the building. These were designed by an artist named Louis Millet, who actually designed several other places that are famous as well, like the original Chicago Public Library, now the Chicago Historical Center, I believe is what it's called. And you'll see back there 4 authors. These were Charles Hackley's favorite authors that he asked to be showcased back there. So you'll see Shakespeare, you'll see Goethe, you'll see Longfellow, and the last one might not be as familiar. That is a historian and essayist named William Prescott that Hackley really admired. So we are here now in our stacks, and this area houses our nonfiction collection here at the library. Now, if you remember, I said we opened in 1890, and where all the books were was over in that room there. And we realized within 5 years that we are book hoarders here at the library, and we needed more space for books. So more money was raised, and we added this collection, or this space, to the library, literally an addition already. And it was opened in 1895, so 5 years after the library opened. So over here we have what would have been one of our original exits to the building, and when we go upstairs we'll make sure you can see some of the original windows to the building as well. Now the reason we call these stacks is because we're literally stacking bookshelves on top of one another, and when you follow the bookshelves up through the floor above us, you'll actually see that there is a gap. These were built to hold up the second floor. So that sounds a little scary, like why would I want to put my whole floor on top of bookshelves, but you should be able to see that these are very well enforced with metal, and we have never, ever moved them. In fact, when you look at our floor, you can see the tread patterns from 125 years of footsteps on the wood. What is special about this space, if you've ever had a chance to visit, you've probably asked us, hey, where are your glass floors? And that is in this space here. If you look above me, you'll be able to see that our whole second floor is made out of glass. And this is another part I like to quiz people on: why in the world would we have glass floors in a library? And when I do this tour with children, I get lots of awesome answers. I will give you the answer that is the real answer, and that is to let light through. We talked about those skylights in our main reading room, and this space would have had big skylights in the ceiling, and that sunlight, even if it was a cloudy day, it would have let that sunlight through our glass floors to light up this space down here. You can see we have modernized our space. We've put in better lights. We've even put in a dumbwaiter to help us get books up to our second floor. And we've even put in a catalog. If you come visit, we have a book catalog here that if you think of something, you can come and search for it in our stacks area. Now, some people very often are a little afraid to walk on our glass floors upstairs, and I always reassure people that it is almost 2 inches thick. It's made out of a special type of sand, so it's a very strong glass. And also, we have it certified pretty often to make sure that it is a safe space to be walking on. So we definitely encourage you, when you get a chance to come visit our library, to come upstairs to see the library from the second floor, which is what we'll do right now. So we're on the second floor of our stacks area of the library, and one of the special collections we have up here on the second floor is actually what we call our glass cases. This is a collection of books that are older books. They're too old or fragile to be on our shelves. And these books are a mixture of original books to the library from when we opened in the 1890s, but also books that were donated to us from private collections, as well as some of the books that Charles Hackley had in his own home. These books actually can be looked at. You only have to make an appointment for a reference librarian to take the item out for you, and then you're welcome to look at it here at the library. So unfortunately, you can't check them out, you can't bring them home. As awesome as it would be to read Costumes of All Nations at home. I've actually seen that one, it's really cool. Different wardrobes from different countries around the world. But it's a very neat collection to look at, and we encourage anyone of any age to come and to look at those items. Even kids, youths are allowed to do this as well. So if you want to come over this way, you can see these are actually our original windows to the library. We didn't need to have the glass in them anymore, so we opened up the space, and this gives you a fun view of our fiction section as well as our stained glass windows. A keen observer will notice that there looks like there's a walkway along the tops of the bookshelves, and in fact that was used as a walkway. Our library building did not have air conditioning until 2017, so we went many years without air conditioning, and one of our staff members in the mornings would go out on the walkway across here to the windows all the way at the back of the collection to open up the windows to help give a nice breeze through the space to hopefully cool down the library building. It still would have been decently warm. If you visited us before we had air conditioning, you can attest to that. As someone who's only worked here since we've had air conditioning, it's awesome. We're very glad we don't have to open up the windows and close them every night, and remember to close them. Who knows what animals might have gotten in. So we are very excited to have air conditioning again, to have it here at the library. So we said that we have 7 fireplaces in our building. Originally, when we opened, our lower level was not for meeting rooms or any other library usage. It was actually to store coal for our fireplaces. So we originally had coal burning fireplaces, then we upgraded them to gas burning fireplaces, and then we finally turned off the gas lines because we have central heat throughout the whole building. Whenever I do this tour with children, they always seem to think that, oh, 7 fireplaces, that's a lot of fireplaces for a building, considering many of us don't actually have a fireplace in our home where we live. But I always think about how big this building is and how big the rooms are, and the idea that if this was our only way to get heat during the day, I have to imagine that actually if you were farther in the stacks where there is no fireplace, then it would have been a pretty chilly building in the winter time. So we are currently in what we call the Julia Hackley room here at the library, and that is named after Julia Hackley, who was Charles Hackley's wife. You will see that we have another painting of her here, and that is another one done by Edwin Turner, that same artist who did the painting of Charles Hackley as well as the opening day painting. The room itself was originally the librarian's reference room, and you will see a picture now of what that looked like when we first opened in 1890. You'll see some doors leading off from the fireplace here, and those actually go into what would have been the staff entrance or exit to the library building, as well as a way to get into the back stacks. If you remember, we said that those were a closed stacks library, so we would have had a couple of exits and entrances back here. Nowadays, this room is actually our young adult room. It houses our YA collection, as well as a table original to our library, along with some other furniture here, including one cool aspect is the doorknob actually to this room is one of our original doorknobs, done by the Winslow brothers, in fact. So one thing you did not actually see in that picture of the library is this small doorway, which we're gonna come on over and open up to peek inside. And I'm sorry to disappoint you, but we will not find the Confederate gold behind this small door. What we will find is, in my opinion, something cooler, and that is a working dumbwaiter. So if you're like me and you read a whole bunch of adventure books as a kid, you always wanted to try riding one or to work one, and here at the library we actually get to work our dumbwaiter. So we are actually going to send this back upstairs, where we will continue our tour of the Youth Services Department. So if you remember, when we were downstairs, we were next to a fireplace in the Julia Hackley room, and we were next to a door that looked just like this. And I'll wager, if we open it up and peek behind the door, we might find our dumbwaiter. Well, it looks like we need to finish pulling it all the way up. And as it comes, oh look, we have a friend who decided to ride in our dumbwaiter from downstairs. So we know that this dumbwaiter is not original to the building because when we were downstairs, if you remember, we saw that one picture of what the room looked like when we first opened in 1890. And there is no dumbwaiter door, so this was added later. We don't really know exactly when it was added, but we know that it definitely helped librarians to move things from downstairs to upstairs before our modern elevator was installed inside the building. What's nice about our dumbwaiter, I'm going to take our superhero Clifford out, is that we can actually put the shelf up and have a bit more space. And that does look like the perfect amount of space for a small child to potentially sneak up and down in the library building, but we definitely do not do that with small children, just books and library materials and a superhero Clifford. So we are now in the main part of the Youth Services Department, and the highlight of our department are definitely the murals that we have on either side of the room. What we like to do when we invite people for tours at the library is ask people to look at one mural and then the other mural and tell us a difference The main difference that we always point out is the color scheme. This mural that you're currently looking at is a much brighter mural, while the mural you started looking at was muted, was a bit darker. And the reason for that is actually that the murals were painted at very different times. The mural you're currently looking at is the first one put into the room, and it's actually titled "The World at Your Door." It's supposed to invite readers to imagine lots of other worlds, but it was also painted back in 1934. This was a works progress administration project done by an artist named Wilfred Berg. He was a young painter, and he was commissioned to come in and paint, and he designed this mural on this wall as well as the mural on the other wall. However, when he went to go paint the mural on this wall, unfortunately they ran out of money for the project and could not pay him, and while they asked him to work for free, this was also the 1930s, and that was not something he was able to do at the time. So this wall stayed empty for many, many years. If you remember, I said the other wall was painted in 1934. And in 1990, our centennial anniversary of the library, a family came forward and gave a grant to the library, and they said, hey, go ahead and paint that wall in youth services with the plans that the library had of what Wilfred Berg wanted to do. So the library went out to go find an artist, and it turned out that Wilfred Berg was still alive. So he came in and he finished painting this mural on this wall. And this mural is called "Idle Hours with Good Books is Time Well Spent." And it's all fun fairy tale creatures that he was able to come in and paint almost 60 years after he painted the first mural. One area in the Youth Services Department that has gone through many changes is actually what we call our Playroom now, but it was a storytime room, it was a staff room, and it originally started as the director's office. So come on and step inside. This used to be the office of our very first director, whose name was Sarah Miner, and she was director for 2 years at the library. I imagine a great portion of the space has actually changed since she was director. I don't think she had quite this colorful carpet of letters to have a fun space for kids nowadays. But one thing that has not changed is her fireplace. We have 7 fireplaces at Hackley Library, and personally speaking, this is my absolute favorite one. None of our fireplaces are in working condition at the moment because we have better heat to go through our building, but this is definitely my favorite fireplace in the building and one of my favorite spaces of all. So the Youth Services Department at the library has not always been the Youth Services Department. When we first opened in 1890, this whole space in here was actually one big open room, and it was a lecture hall. Now that space was also used in 1905 when Charles Hackley passed away, and he actually laid in state while this was that big lecture hall up here. And we have a picture of where he laid in state, which was this area right here, which we actually use for story time right now. So there's that bit of trivia for you. When all of the mourners came in to pay respects to Charles Hackley, over 7,000 people, they saw this space and they said, you know, we really could use this for something a little bit more than a lecture hall. And they actually raised money to create this space in the library to be a portrait gallery or an art gallery. However, as we talked about before, the library used to have a lot of skylights. And these blue squares and rectangles you see above us, those used to be our skylights. And if you know anything about art, you know that when that sunlight comes in and it hits paint or anything like that, that is actually going to compromise the painting. So some of the smart people in the city said, you know, we really can't make that space an art gallery, we need to actually do something a little bit different. And what those conversations eventually became is that this space became the kids department. But we are missing some heroes in our story, and those are the children of Muskegon. The children petitioned the library to have their own space. And in 1922, they actually won their petition, and they got their own floor of the library. And this space has always been, since 1922, a space for children to come and to read and to learn and to play, because we play a lot at the library as well. A place to interact with stories and to wrestle with topics that might be challenging or difficult, but to learn through that and to grow. Above all, it's about growing our future in our community, and we're still doing that at Hackley Library. When the library was being designed in the 1880s, Charles Hackley was able to give a huge input into the design process. And one of his stipulations is that his library needed a tower. He referred to the tower as a beacon of knowledge, that it pointed up towards the sky to help elevate learners in some aspect. It's a little bit like how Andrew Carnegie wanted a staircase in front of his libraries when they were designed, that when you learn something, it elevates you as a person. One of the things that he also wanted inside his tower, at the very, very top, are stars to help mimic the night sky and to add, a little bit of whimsy here at the library. So this is our beautiful tower, our beacon of knowledge. It is the staircase that comes from the bottom floor of the library all the way to the main floor of the library to our youth services department. So here we are in our foyer of the library, and what our biggest showcase is, kind of speaks for itself, is our mosaic tile floor. If you are a normal library user and you're thinking to yourself, I don't really remember seeing all of the floor at the library, I really remember seeing a carpet, and I remember seeing a carpet covering much of the floor. And the reason, the secret behind that, is that much of our floor actually had gone away. After years and years of people coming in, our historic doors, since we opened in 1890, the grout actually between the tiles just loosened, and we lost tiles throughout the years. And these tiles are pretty special because each one is actually a marble piece. In fact, much of the library is built with marble and not wood, which is kind of an interesting tidbit considering Charles Hackley was a lumber baron. But when he gave his money to build the library, he stipulated it can't burn down. We can't have it burn down, so we're going to build it out of marble. And in fact, you will see marble along the lower parts of the walls. And inside our library, if you look closely, you will see marble baseboards. And underneath our carpet in our main rooms here is a marble floor. So it's actually pretty darn hard. Each one of these tiles is unique with that marble nature. And when we wanted to redo the floor, we needed a special company to come in to help us. So Marion Restoration out of Chicago came up, and they were able to match the marble tiles. So to recreate our mosaic, they were able to match the colors. So when they came in, much of our floor was actually worn away. So if you come and take a closer look, you can actually see some differences, and it takes a close look, which actually speaks to how well they restored our floor. But some of what they did is you can see an arc through the fleur-de-lis here, where they replaced that, as well as replacing much of the floor here, our whole flower over here, as well as all of the tile underneath our doors. After years and years of people walking in and out, almost all of those tiles were gone. And in fact, as employees, we could feel the wind coming in from the floor on cold winter days. And being here in Michigan meant for some really cold days, we can tell you that. So we're very happy to be able to showcase our restored mosaic floor. And it was restored in 2019, so if you haven't been back to the library in a while, you're not going crazy, we promise. It was in fall of 2019. Another thing that we really like about this space are, of course, our doors. This is special brass work done by a company in the 1880s. And that company's name is the Winslow Brothers, who are also from Chicago. What's really great is when you come in close, you can see the sun god, and you can see these great geometric and floral patterns within that brass work. And when you clean it up, it looks really great. They also did the brass work on the staircase railing, as well as throughout the library, which it does take a keen eye to spot. Several of our door handles are made by the Winslow Brothers as well. Thank you so much for joining us on our virtual tour of the building today. We're very proud of our library here in Muskegon. We do love to share this with people. If you liked this tour, definitely consider coming into the library. We try and do a historic tour of the building once a month after hours, and we like to respond more with people and answer questions, and it makes it more of a dynamic tour. So we gave you the barest minimum of history here today, but we're excited to see you again when you can come through our historic doors to visit the library.